everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. Today we're going to be looking at the weekend box office, including another takeover from Taylor Swift and a career low as far as wide opening weekends for Dwayne Johnson. So let's jump right into it and look at the latest box office figures. These are the actual figures for October 3rd through the 5th. And the number one movie was Taylor Swift, the official release party of a showgirl. It was a one weekend only engagement, and it brought in $34 million. And when you look at the other movies that were in the box office top 10 this weekend, it looks like Taylor Swift saved us from a pretty disappointing weekend overall, although it still wasn't a great one. One battle after another dropped 50% in its second weekend. That's not terrible. I think you might hope for just a little bit better if you're going for that older adult skewing awards crowd, but 50% is not bad. $11 million in weekend number two. It's at $42.6 million total. In third place was The Smashing Machine, which brought in just over $6 million. Even though this wasn't a blockbuster or a franchise film for Dwayne Johnson, that's still a disappointment for A24, especially compared to what people were hoping it would do with all of the buzz, etc., for his performance. Audiences just didn't really show up, and we'll get a lot more into that later on. In fourth place was Gabby's Dollhouse, the movie. This surprised me. It dropped 61.1%. Younger skewing films, kids' movies sometimes will tend to hold a little bit better, but it looks like there was a lot of demand for that first weekend. It brought in $5.3 million. The Conjuring Last Rite still hanging around the top five. It dropped 38.8% to bring in another $4.1 million. In sixth place was Demon Slayer Infinity Castle. Very rare to see an anime film after sometimes 2 weeks, definitely 3 weeks, but after 4 weeks to still be in the top 10. It brought in $3.5 million. It's at $124.6 million domestically. We've seen a lot of success with re-releases lately, but it wasn't a huge pop for Avatar: The Way of Water, which is back in theaters for 1 week only. It brought in $3.2 million. When you consider that I'm sure most or all of that was premium tickets, 3D, IMAX, etc., that's not a great result, although that movie's fine. I don't think the Avatar: The Way of Water is going to cry over not making more money. The Strangers Chapter 2 didn't have a great opening last weekend, but it at least avoided the horror movie dropped. It only dropped 51% in weekend number two for another $2.8 million. It's at $10.7 million domestically. Good Boy, which was initially slated for a more limited release but was expanded due to earlier reaction, did an all right result for a movie that didn't have a whole lot of resources. It brought in $2.3 million. And rounding out the top 10, when the final numbers came in, it was very close between The Long Walk and a movie from India that we're going to talk about later on. But my figures and sources have The Long Walk at number 10 with $1.7 million. It's at $31.9 million domestically. Many people still asking me to review The Long Walk. Maybe I'll have to give in this week. Dropping out of the top 10, we had 4 movies. Downton Abbey, the grand finale, out after 3 weeks. Him is out after just 2 weeks. And then 2 movies that are out after just 1 week. The Indian film They Call Him OG and the Fathom re-release of Spider-Man 2. Looking at the biggest theater count changes for this past weekend, A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. I believe this is the biggest number of theaters lost for any movie this year. If it's not, it's close. It lost 2,721 theaters just as soon as the theaters could possibly drop it. It's now in just 609. It's just disappointing all around for this film. The Senior drops 1,365 theaters. It's now in 485. Him lost 1,031 theaters. It's still in 2,137. Downton Abbey, the grand finale, really the biggest release almost out of all these. It lost 779 theaters, but it's still in 2,050. And Freakier Friday lost the bulk of its remaining theaters. It's down 725 theaters. It's still in 160. This is what I like to call our road to recovery. The blue line is the box office weekend average for 2015 to 2019. The red line is 2021 to 2024. And the dotted black line is every weekend this year. And you can see that even though Taylor Swift had a great weekend at the box office for her album release party, the rest of the movies couldn't really back that up, and we came in pretty much right at the average, maybe even a little bit below average. And if Taylor Swift had not done this release party thing, I think we would have been very much below where we have been. I just don't see the crossover. Nothing says to me that the audience that went to see Taylor Swift would have gone to see something else this past weekend. So she at least keeps us to the bare baseline of way below where we were. I mean, this has just not been the best year, not the year that people were hoping for, but we got some big movies coming up at the end of the year. So we'll see what we can do with the last several weeks of 2025. And speaking of Taylor Swift and her release party, she's now had in 2 years 2 films or 2 events that have hit theaters around the country, and they both share something in common besides the fact that they feature Taylor Swift. They both got an A+ on CinemaScore. If you'll remember, and we've talked about this on the show many times, CinemaScore is not necessarily a measure of quality, it's a measure of whether the audience got what they expected when they showed up, and obviously Taylor Swift fans were very happy with what they got with the Taylor Swift release party. So 2 A+ cinema scores for Taylor Swift in a row. She was credited as the director on the release party, but she was not credited as the director on the Eras Tour movie. But that got me thinking for this week's trivia question, what director holds the record for having the most movies to receive an A+ cinema score? It's a pretty rare event. You don't see it very often. So in the Rolodex of movie directors in the last 40 plus years since CinemaScore has been doing their thing, what director holds the record? I'll give you a second to think about it. And if you got this, I'm going to be very impressed because the answer is Alex Kendrick. Who's Alex Kendrick, you ask? Well, he has directed a series of movies that largely appeal to the Christian, to the faith-based crowd, and 4 of those movies, Courageous, War Room, Overcomer, and The Forge, over the last 10 years or so, have all gotten A+ cinema scores. He holds the record for any director. If you're going to talk about studio directors, directors that are working inside the studio system, then there are 2 directors that are tied with 3 movies apiece with A+ cinema scores. Steven Spielberg, no shocker there, and then Rob Reiner. People forget that Rob Reiner went on kind of a generational run. The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, and A Few Good Men all got A+ cinema scores. So it was a weekend of highs for Taylor Swift at the box office, but it was a pretty low weekend for Dwayne Johnson, who was looking to break out into the awards prestige circuit with The Smashing Machine. If you saw my review here on the channel, you'll know that I was actually quite complimentary of his performance, but I didn't think the movie was that great. And it seems that audiences disagreed, or maybe that's the word that got out, because The Smashing Machine wasn't even one of the 10 highest opening films in A24 history, and it was the lowest gross for a wide release in Dwayne Johnson's career at just over $6 million. It beats out his previous low, which was Fighting with My Family. He did not star in that, but it was a very personal film. He made an appearance in it. It opened to $7.8 million in wide release back in February of 2019, although it should be noted that it did 1 week in limited release in just a few theaters. Before that, you have to go to Faster back in 2010, which opened to $8.5 million, although that movie released on Wednesday. Then we have Planet 51 in 2009 at $12.2 million. I don't even remember this movie. I don't remember. If you would have told me this movie was made up, I would have believed you. Snitch in 2013 comes in 5th place at $13.1 million back in 2013. Then we have 2010's The Tooth Fairy at $14 million. So we're going to late 2000s, early 2010s rock here to get these grosses. Gridiron Gang in 2006 is at number 7. Doom back in 2005 is at number 8. Walking Tall in 2004 at number 9. And then we have 2017's Baywatch, which was a box office disappointment, although it should be noted that that movie opened on Thursday. So there was a whole day of grosses that is not included in this wide opening weekend. Not that it makes that much of a difference. There was some hope that there might be some crossover appeal here, that it would reach a wider base than many A24 films do, but it just really wasn't able to penetrate that movie ecosystem or whatever you want to call it. And it's a disappointment for A24 because this was a very high budget for them. It was reportedly a $50 million budget on this movie, which is very rare with A24 films. And also, even when you look at the high budget A24 movies, I mean, Civil War was a $50 million A24 movie, but that movie looked like a $50 million movie. Having seen The Smashing Machine, I have to guess that a lot of that money went to the talent, went to The Rock, went to Emily Blunt, went to Mr. Dwayne Johnson, went to Emily Blunt, because the movie does not look like a $50 million movie. It looks like a $5 to $8 million indie film. And the thing with A24 and studios like Blumhouse that launched in the past 10, 15 years, when people looked at their budgets in the past, one of the ways that they were able to keep that budget low was to pay their stars less, but give them participation in the profits for the movie so they could make the movie for cheap, but people would benefit if the movie did well. It does not look like A24 took that approach with The Smashing Machine, and now it's going to be very difficult for this movie, I think, to be a financial success. We'll see how it does on the awards circuit. We'll see if Dwayne Johnson does get any of these awards nominations, if there might be more interest drummed up. But overall, I think a disappointment for Dwayne Johnson. Financially, he's very proud of his performance in the film, and he should be. And I think a disappointment for A24 as well financially, and we'll see what happens as awards season begins to play out over the next few months. On the other end of the spectrum, Paul Thomas Anderson is now celebrating his highest grossing film ever domestically. One Battle After Another has now passed There Will Be Blood with $42.6 million to be the highest grossing P.T. Anderson film, although, as we noted on last week's show, also the highest budgeted Paul Thomas Anderson film. Boogie Nights, Magnolia, and Phantom Thread round out the top 5. And when you adjust for inflation, One Battle After Another is now the 4th highest grossing Paul Thomas Anderson movie of all time. It has moved past Punch Drunk Love. It's pretty close behind Magnolia, and then it's got a little bit of work to do if it wants to catch Boogie Nights and There Will Be Blood, which is currently number 1 at $63.6 million domestically. A few people brought this up, and quite frankly, with all of the craziness and the moving and everything else that's been going on, I just kind of forgot to do this when we changed seasons. But this week, I did do the 2025 fall holiday box office chart. So these will be the top 10 movies of the post-summer, so starting in September to the end of the year season. These are movies released during the fall holiday box office window. As you can see, The Conjuring: Last Rites is the highest grossing film of this season so far at $167.8 million, followed by Demon Slayer: Infinity Castle. This past weekend, One Battle After Another moved up to number 3, with Downton Abbey, the grand finale, at number 4. Taylor Swift's Release Party is now a top 5 movie for the fall holiday box office season at $34 million, with The Long Walk at number 6, Him at number 7, Gabby's Dollhouse the movie at number 8, the re-release of Hamilton coming in at number 9, and The Strangers Chapter 2 rounding out the top 10. And now that it is in the rotation, I will be updating this chart every week. It just kind of slipped my mind along with everything else. Well, it seems like just about every week our eyes turn to a new potential box office savior, and it hasn't worked out a lot of those weeks. But this upcoming weekend, the new big movie is Tron Ares, and it poses a very interesting question. It's going to be my member poll question for this week, because box office tracking, or some of it that I've read so far, has it coming in almost exactly where the last Tron movie, Tron Legacy, opened about 15 years ago, around $44 million. So my member poll question for this week, it's very simple. It's a yes/no question. Do you think Tron Ares will beat the opening weekend of Tron Legacy, which came in at $44,026,211. This is not adjusted for inflation. You can vote right now, yes or no, on the member poll, which is live on the YouTube page, and the answer will be revealed right here on the show next week. And let's look at last week's member poll. I asked everybody, what is the best horror movie / franchise to watch leading up to Halloween as we get into October? And the number 1 vote getter was Scream, with 26 votes. Right behind it, no shocker there, is Halloween with 24 votes. In third place was The Nightmare Before Christmas with 16 votes. Horror movie? That's debatable, but the people have spoken. I am just a mouthpiece for the people at this point. A Nightmare on Elm Street comes in 4th place with 13 votes, and Trick or Treat, which I think is a great Halloween movie that's not always the first one mentioned, comes in 5th place with 11 votes. And if you want to get a chance to vote in this week's member poll and you're not a member yet, there's a couple easy ways to do it. Depending on how you're watching the video, there might just be a button for you to push that says become a member. Or if you want to go down to the description below, you can definitely find a link to become a member. You not only get to vote in the member poll here on the channel each and every week, but you also get exclusive early access to some of my videos and custom badges and emoji to use down in the chat. I would love to hear your voice, and you could well be the vote that decides whether Tron Ares is going to beat Tron Legacy or not, at least in the opinion of the members. These are the best per theater averages of this past weekend. At number 1 is the documentary Orwell, 2 + 2 = 5, which sort of came onto the scene at the Cannes Film Festival. It brought in $25,887 in just one theater, easily the best per theater average of the weekend. The Librarians, which is a documentary about, no shocker there, librarians, opened in one theater and brought in $12,943. Taylor Swift, the official release party of a Showgirl, brought in $9,200 per theater in each of its 3,700 plus theaters. So good for theater owners because it would have been pretty slow otherwise. A 4K restoration of the Tim Robbins film Jacob's Ladder comes in 4th place, bringing in $4,965 per theater in one theater. And in 5th place is the political comedy Can't Let It Go, which is set around the 2016 election, I believe. It played in one theater and brought in $3,800. These were the top 5 films in limited release, meaning 1,000 theaters or fewer. At number 1 is the movie that was almost a top 10 movie this weekend domestically, Kantara, A Legend, Chapter 1, which brought in $1.716 million in 689 theaters. It is a Kannada language film from India and a prequel to 2022's film, Kantara. No surprise there. In 2nd place is the restoration, the 4K restoration of Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue, which played in 471 theaters and brought in just over $700,000. In 3rd place is the Daniel Day-Lewis film Anemone. He returned to act in the film. He co-wrote it along with his son. His son directed the film. It played in 865 theaters, but a pretty low total for a movie with a star of that level, at least when you talk about prestige, and with a release of that size, just $681,655. Scarlett Johansson's film Eleanor the Great, starring June Squibb, contracted theaters in its 2nd week, so it looks like its box office run is already starting to come to a close. It brought in $296,000, and the film Dead of Winter in 400 theaters brought in just over $138,000. Let's turn now from the domestic box office to the top 5 films internationally, which is all markets outside of the US and Canada. And Kantara, A Legend, Chapter 1 was a big hit in other markets. It did well here, but it made $24.85 million internationally. That's a great number for a film from India. We only get a handful of movies from India that do these kind of numbers a year. In 2nd place is The Volunteers, Peace at Last, which brought in $22.8 million. That movie is a Chinese film. It's the 3rd, I believe, of the Volunteers film, and it focuses on the end of what we here in the United States call the Korean War, what they in China call the war to resist the U.S. and aid Korea. This was the National Day of the People's Republic of China, which is actually a week-long celebration. That's why we see a couple Chinese films here, new Chinese films in the top 5. One Battle After Another dropped 16.9% in its 2nd weekend internationally as it continues to roll out around the world. It brought in another $21.7 million. The movie 731 is having quite a roller coaster. It had a huge drop last weekend, but it had an increase in business this weekend. It was up 22.7% and brought in $18.7 million. And then another film from China, A Writer's Odyssey 2, rounds out the top 5 with $15.2 million. When you take those international numbers, you combine them with our domestic numbers, we get the top 5 films worldwide, and Taylor Swift rules the world. You don't need me to tell you that. With the official release party of a Showgirl, it brought in a total of $47 million worldwide, of course, most of that coming from the United States. One Battle After Another comes in 2nd place with another $32.7 million worldwide. It's now over $100 million worldwide. That makes it the first Paul Thomas Anderson movie to break $100 million worldwide, and also his highest grossing film of all time worldwide. Kantara, A Legend, Chapter 1 comes in 3rd place at $26.56 million. It's made $35.7 million total, according to my sources. There are always some folks saying that these aren't accurate. I can only go with the best sources I can find online, and they are tough to find. The Volunteers, Peace at Last is in 4th place. Its total is $51.1 million, including income that came before this past weekend. And 731 is in 5th place at $18.7 million. Its worldwide total now at $252.3 million. And when we look at the 2025 worldwide box office, the top 5 remains the same for now, but Demon Slayer Infinity Castle will soon be a top 5 movie for the year 2025. It's only a couple of $1 million behind How to Train Your Dragon, which is currently number 5. It was able to leapfrog Superman and F1 the movie over the past week. So look for a top 5 finish for Demon Slayer Infinity Castle next week, and we'll see what movies might be coming out soon that could potentially displace the Fantastic Four first steps for number 10 on that list. So that's everything that's going on at the box office. Let's take a look now at the world of streaming, and we will start with the latest numbers from Netflix. New numbers come out today, but these cover September 22nd through September 28th. And the number 1 program on Netflix, no shocker there, is once again K-Pop Demon Hunters. Another week, another 19.32 million views. It's old hat by now. It's already broken the record for most weeks consecutively on the Netflix top 10, and it's just continuing the dominance that we've seen over the past few months. In second place is Billionaire's Bunker Season 1, which brought in 10.29 million views. That's a show from Spain about billionaires writing out a potential nuclear apocalypse in a bunker. So I guess the title's pretty accurate. In third place is Ruth and Boaz, which brought in 10.26 million views, almost good enough for number 2. It is a modern-day retelling of a Bible story from director Alana Brown. In fourth place is She Said Maybe, which brought in 8.86 million views. Then in fifth place is the debut of Alice in Borderland Season 3 at 8.49 million views. Wayward, which I believe stars my beloved Toni Collette, debuts at number 6. That's a Netflix original series at 8.23 million views. Then we have the Netflix original movie French Lover at number 7 at just over 8 million views. The Wrong Paris, which is not about France, unlike the other movie, is at number 8 at 7.57 million views. Then at number 9, we have Mantis, which is a South Korean movie about an assassin, not the almost certainly forgotten by everyone but me 1994 Fox series starring Carl Lumbly as a paralyzed man who builds an exoskeleton and becomes a superhero. Mantis and Viper, 2 shows nobody remembers that are stuck in my brain because I was a child. And rounding out the top 10 is Black Rabbit with almost 7 million views, 6.96 million. Still not a great number for a show with the kind of talent attached that it has. These are the most watched programs of 2025, and Wednesday Season 2 has now jumped over Straw to become the 7th most watched program at 106.99 million views. It's not going to approach the view total that we saw for Season 1, but it is over 100 million. The top 5 remain the same, and yeah, K-Pop Demon Hunters is only number 1 by about 200 million views. So I'd say that it's opened up a bit of a lead there. Now, this next graphic is interesting. I've talked about the fact that when K-Pop Demon Hunters became the most watched movie on Netflix in its first 90 days, it was reported in many sources that it was the most watched Netflix movie ever, which is not true. It's just over its first 90 days. But it is now rapidly approaching that actual mark. These are the most watched films on Netflix based on all ratings data that Netflix has provided since 2021, which is when they started to provide data. You can see that Red Notice is still number 1. This is all the viewing data that we have for Red Notice, so it covers multiple years since it was released on Netflix. But K-Pop Demon Hunters is now less than 20 million views away from bypassing Red Notice to actually become the most watched Netflix film since they began providing ratings data. So if it has another week like it just had, it could very well take that number 1 spot when the new numbers come out later today. So The Rock didn't have a great weekend at the box office, and he may just be hours away from losing his crown as the co-star of the most watched Netflix movie of all time. I will, of course, be tracking that, and I'll update you on next week's show. Let's take a look now at the latest numbers from Nielsen. Now, unlike Netflix, these are domestic numbers only, not global, and they're delayed by about a month. So these are from September 1st through the 7th. And at number 1, as far as movies go, was the Netflix original movie Unknown Number at 18.36 million hours watched. I said on last week's show I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a surge in viewership, and that's exactly what we did see. It just barely unseated K-Pop Demon Hunters, which is number 2 at 18.13 million hours watched. Then we have the debut of Lilo and Stitch, the 2025 version on Disney+. It brought in 13.38 million hours watched. The Thursday Murder Club's at number 4. Thunderbolt stays in the top 5 at 6.1 million hours watched. And then we have a bunch of new movies because it was the first week of a new month. And 3 of them are Shrek movies. The first Shrek is at number 6 at 4.8 million hours watched. Then we have Spike Lee's latest film, Highest to Lowest, at 4.68 million hours watched on Apple TV. So yes, Shrek, largely on Netflix, drew higher ratings domestically in its first week than Spike Lee's newest film. In 8th place is Shrek 2, 9th place is Shrek the Third, and in 10th place is another really good movie, Wind River, at just over 4 million hours watched. These were the most watched streaming shows for September 1st through the 7th. At number 1 was Wednesday. This was the debut of its new batch of episodes, that second batch in season 2. So it had a big number, 55.63 million hours watched. Then we have My Life with the Walter Boys in second place at 18.9 million hours watched. Bluey on Disney Plus is at number 3. Orphan Black, which debuted on Netflix, hits the list at number 4 at 13.8 million hours watched. Then we have The Summer I Turned Pretty on Amazon Prime Video at 12.26 hours watched. It was wrapping up its final season. SpongeBob SquarePants is in 6th place, followed by Grey's Anatomy, Paw Patrol, Blind Spot, and The Big Bang Theory. And this second batch of Wednesday episodes for season 2 helped propel it to the third best streaming performance as far as hours watched that we've seen this year, behind the debut of Wednesday season 2, so the debut of that first batch of episodes. Both of them, though, trail the first week of the year when Squid Game 2 had a carryover from its release at 76.58 million hours watched. That's going to be very hard to top. So we have Squid Game at number 1, Wednesday in 2nd place and 3rd place. Then the debut of the first batch of episodes for Squid Game 3 in 4th place at 53.4 million hours watched, and The Night Agents debut week with its second season from January 20th to the 26th at 51.83 million hours watched. And finally, these were the top shows as far as watch time per available episodes. So you take the total watch time for all the series in the Nielsen Top 20, you divide it by the number of episodes available to watch, and we get this top 10. At number 1 was Wednesday, which generated 3.27 million hours of watch time for each of its 17 episodes. There's no delineation between season 1 and season 2. Then we have Katrina Come Hell or High Water with 2.42 million hours per episode for each of its 3 episodes. NCIS, Tony and Ziva, which is a spinoff of, you guessed it, NCIS, comes in at just over 2 million hours per episode for each of its first 3 episodes. Then we have The Terminal List, Dark Wolf, at 1.94 million hours per episode. Alien Earth staying in the top 5 through 5 episodes at 1.22 million hours per episode. My Life with the Walter Boys is in 6th place. Miss Rachel is in 7th place. The Paper debuts in 8th place. That's like a Netflix 4, but a Peacock 10 as far as hours watched per episode, meaning that if that had been a debut on Netflix, that'd be pretty disappointing, but it's pretty good for Peacock. Still, I would have expected maybe a little bit more, 570,000 hours per episode there. The Summer I Turned Pretty is at number 9, and Orphan Black rounds out the top 10 with 277,000 hours per episode. And that pretty much wraps us up for this week. Before we go, though, I wanted to direct your attention to some stuff that you might be interested in, both in theaters and at home this upcoming week. First of all, now streaming on Paramount Plus is a new documentary. It was actually delayed following Ozzy Osbourne's death at the request of his family. It's called Ozzy, No Escape From Now. It's a look at the last years of his life, his farewell show, and what ended up being the last days, really, of his life. The family actually participated in the film. They just wanted there to be a bit more of a gap before the release of it following his death. So you can catch that right now on Paramount Plus. And then a few movies hitting digital sale and premium video on demand today. First of all, The Conjuring Last Rites, Freakier Friday, also available to buy and rent for premium video on demand. Those are those higher price rentals. And Him, also available to watch digitally starting today. On Thursday, it seems like the season just debuted, but it's time for the season 2 finale of Peacemaker on HBO Max. And then we have several movies hitting theaters on Friday. First of all, we already talked about it a little bit. We have Tron Ares, which I think would be qualified as the biggest new release of the weekend. Also hitting theaters is a movie that debuted all the way back at the Sundance Film Festival in January, Kiss of the Spider-Woman, which has generated some buzz for its performances. Speaking of Sundance, I talked about this on my live show last week, but I actually have gotten for the first time press credentials to cover the Sundance Film Festival in person early next year. So I am super excited about that. It was literally one of the things that I started this channel to have the ability to do. So in late January, early February, you can look for my on-the-ground coverage from the Sundance Film Festival in the last year where it's going to be at Park City, Utah. I'm super excited about that. humble brag, I don't know what you'd call it, just super excited. Also hitting theaters this weekend is Roof Man, which takes the award already for trailer I've seen the most over the last 2 months. It stars Channing Tatum as a fugitive who's hiding out in some sort of a big box type toy store. It comes from director Derek Cianfrance. His last film was Sound of Metal, which was nominated for a lot of Oscars, won a couple of them. He also directed Blue Valentine and The Place Beyond the Pines. In limited release this upcoming weekend is Luca Guadagnino's latest film, After the Hunt, starring Julia Roberts, Andrew Garfield, and Io Adebri. I've also seen this trailer a few times. I'm interested in this movie. I think it's I don't know what's going on with it exactly, but I'm interested in it. Catherine Bigelow's latest film hits very limited release this upcoming weekend. It's called A House of Dynamite, and it's only going to play in a few theaters. Then it's going to hit Netflix in a couple of weeks. Also hitting limited release is Urchin, which was written and directed by Harris Dickinson. It's about a young man putting things back together after going to prison. Harris Dickinson is an actor you've seen in movies like Triangle of Sadness and many, many others. I've heard some good things about this movie. Then we have another documentary. If the Ozzy one didn't get you already earlier in the week, John Candy, I Like Me, will be debuting on Amazon Prime Video this Friday. It is a look at legendary comic actor John Candy, directed by Colin Hanks, filled with testimonials from his friends and family. I'm super excited by that one. Then debuting on Netflix this week on Friday, we have The Woman in Cabin 10. Keira Knightley plays a journalist covering a story on a luxury yacht who tries to convince her elite shipmates that she saw a murder. I wonder if she and the woman on the train could get together. And then finally debuting on Peacock this upcoming week is How to Train Your Dragon. So if you missed How to Train Your Dragon in theaters, you can watch it on Peacock starting on Friday. And that's all I've got for you this week. As always, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to stay tuned right here for the latest in movie news, reviews, box office, and more. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up on this video, hit the bell so you know when I am uploading a new video. And thanks for watching me yell numbers at you as always. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.